What is going on, guys? Welcome back. You know, we always told you when news was going to break, we were going to be here to bring it to you, and thus it's happened again. Now, I'll be honest, Jimmy, you can probably speak more qualified than most people to Ben Askren's situation right now because, number one, you just went through a hip replacement yourself.
Yes.
This is obviously a big part of why he's retired. But also, you really got to see the professional Ben Askren more than most commentators could really ever say. I think when I think back to Ben Askren, I know a lot of people are going to put labels on, was it a success or was it a failure? To me, if you look at it just at face value, the trade for Demetrius Johnson, what Ben Askren returned versus what Demetrius Johnson has returned, Ben Askren was a failure. But you can't look at it that way. I mean, Ben Askren was an extremely accomplished fighter before he came into the UFC. I honestly think it was just too much late for Ben Askren to come in, and maybe this kind of all of a sudden retirement is almost putting a cap on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you heard the expression too much too soon. I think you hit it right on the head. It's too much too late. I think by the time he came into the UFC, I think I got him in his prime. I saw his 9 fights in Bellator, and of course have a lot more to expand on that. But it could have been too late in his career. He had already been through a lot, and I hear that a lot when it comes to pride fighters coming into the UFC, which is really the last time we had kind of a free agency free-for-all. And, hey, you know, pride fighters didn't do well in the UFC. And I said, a lot of them had 30 fights when they came to the UFC. Takanori Gomi left his best work in pride, period. He was never great in the UFC, partly because he went through so many wars in pride. Vanderlei Silva was not at his best in the UFC. Krokop was not at his best in the UFC. It's just by the time they got here, they had left their prime somewhere else. Is that part of the problem with Ben? Yes. I think there's more to it, and I'll be happy to get into that in a minute. But when people talk about the trade between Demetrius Johnson and Ben Askren, it's not about wins and losses. That has nothing to do with it. Who has been more successful in the promotion they went to? Of course, Demetrius Johnson. I think he's the better all-around fighter anyway. But Ben got a lot of eyes, got a lot of attention, set Masvidal up for a huge fight with Nate Diaz. So in terms of the eyes it brought and the excitement it brought and the hype he brought, that was a success. Now, success depends upon expectations. A lot of fans expected Ben Askren to compete for a title, to be up amongst the elite. And one of the things that will stick around with his legacy is, especially against Damian Maia, because, you know, who knows about the Masvidal fight, I didn't see someone with elite level skills. I just didn't see that. Even before he got choked out, when I was watching that first round, I was like, holy God, this guy can't strike. It's like he just learned how to do it. And I think that was ultimately the story of his transition to UFC. He always said, I'm going to take them down until they can't stop me. Well, until they can stop me. And well, the problem is that as soon as they do, you have 10 years of kickboxing to catch up on. And the thing to me that surprised me is I thought Ben would have success in the UFC until he got to another elite wrestler who could stop his takedown and make him box and make him use his other skills. The only time that happened in Bellator was against Jay Haran. I thought he lost that fight. And remember, Jay Haran, not a standout wrestler. He wrestled a little bit at Hofstra, but not an All-American, not an Olympian, didn't win any national titles. And when he couldn't take Haran down at will, he really had trouble winning rounds. I thought he lost. So we saw somebody who, from that fight to the Damian Maia fight, was the next time he really had to stand up with anybody, who didn't seem to develop. He looked just as bad on the feet against Jay Haran as he did against Damian Maia. That's unbelievable. That's an 8-year gap between fights, and you look the same. And I think it's one of those things where when I used to teach MMA, one of the things I said is you have to wrestle like you don't know jiu-jitsu, right? You have to strike like you don't know how to wrestle. You have to really convince yourself man, I got to learn to box. You box like you don't know how to kick. Like it's like this boxing sparring is life or death. You can't say, if I could kick him, this would be over. Or I'd really clinch him in real life. You can't think that way. And I think Ben always thought whenever he did his striking training, or it looked like from when he was hitting pads, that he trained like, I would just take him down. I don't really need to be great at this. I'm such a great wrestler. I really don't need this. And the rest of his game never really developed. And it worked in Bellator when he was fighting essentially dangerous striker with some submission skills and no wrestling. Defines everyone he fought in Bellator with the exception of Jay Haran. Douglas Lima, Lyman Good, Dan Hornbuckle, Andrei Koreshkov, Carl Amasu. They had some submissions. They weren't great. They had really dangerous stand-up and no wrestling, and he ate those guys alive. As soon as it was, boy, I need to stand up a little bit. I need to use my other skills. He just didn't have them. And I think the years he could have spent developing them, he really relied on his wrestling. So, a mixed legacy for Ben Askren, which most people have a mixed legacy, but that's the mix to me.
Well, I mean, on paper, it looks awful. It really does. He gets knocked out in 5 seconds. He gets beaten down by Damian Maia. Looks as you penned so eloquently, not elite in doing so. But, if you look at it from a business standpoint, because at the end of the day, all of this is a business. Ben Askren made very, very good business decisions for himself, right? He's retiring, not due to a head injury, but to a hip injury. Things wear out. You're all too familiar with that, obviously.
I'm a living example, yes.
Exactly. So he's really no worse for wear. But the reality is, listen, when Bellator's contract ended, he went over to ONE. They paid him a lot more money. He became a massive star to the point that he got traded into the UFC. Now, obviously, when he gets here, I'm sure this isn't how he had it drawn up. But the reality was he was already retired at that point. So, he's going to leave a bigger mark if you look at the UFC landscape than probably any 1-3 fighter or 1-2 fighter, whatever the case was going to be, could have been. So if you look at it just by wins and losses, I think almost kind of like you said, you're missing the point. But at the end of the day, you also, can't look past what actually happened. I mean, he looked, if this was the Ben Askren that was in Bellator and in, I just lost my train of thought. ONE FC, thank you.
Yeah.
Then, all he did really, from a fan's perspective, and a lot of this is when you picked it up, was devalue further when you look outside of the UFC. Because so many people are going to look, I remember distinctly before he came over, they were constantly saying, well, wait till Ben Askren gets there. Ben Askren will show you, what a real good wrestler does. And unfortunately, I don't think that's exactly what they expected to take place. And it's really hurt, I think, a lot of that crossover appeal at a time where, we needed those other smaller, or I guess in some cases, global established fighting groups to really kind of rival the UFC in a way. That's probably not going to happen now because of what happened here. Great for Ben as a person, but bad for MMA as a whole.
Well, here's the deal. There's already a fan bias toward the UFC. Now, it's not undeserved necessarily, but the idea of free agency working multiple ways, because right now, the way it works mostly is you fight in the UFC, you get famous, you make money, you build a name, your contract's up, you go somewhere else, you make more money, right? Rory McDonald, Sage Northcutt, the Benson Henderson, but the idea of someone coming into the UFC with juice.
Artem Lobov, the GOAT. I mean, what are you doing,
Jimmy? The GOAT, bro. How could I forget the GOAT? So, the idea of someone coming into the UFC with juice, with notoriety, a free agent that, wow, I can't wait to see this guy in the UFC. How often are we going to see that? Ben might be, I don't want to say the last of that. Who knows if the UFC signs a Douglas Lima or a Patricio Pitbull or something like that over from Bellator. But Ben came in with so much hype as a free agent. We hadn't really seen that since, I would say, the end of Strikeforce. Eddie Alvarez did to maybe some hardcore fans. I think Ben, with his mouth and his attitude and his I'm going to kick everybody's ass and his controversy, I think came in with more hype than a free agent since the end of Strikeforce and Pride. And that says a lot because your average MMA fan right now couldn't tell you one person he beat in ONE FC. They don't really have any idea, but Ben himself kind of marketed himself so well that he became must-see TV for the 3 fights he was in. And as I was thinking about it today, and I was like, Ryan's going to text me, we're going to do this show. You know what name popped into my head when I thought of Ben Askren? Just like free association. I swear, Tim Tebow. He got as far as he could with the talent he had, right? But the impact he made was much bigger than that, was much bigger than the sum of his parts. I could name off the top of my head 24 quarterbacks that are better than Tim Tebow. But your average person, your average fan, knows who Tim Tebow is and doesn't know who any of those people are. So it's really interesting that he almost had that effect where Tim Tebow just forced a personality, his story and, all this stuff made him more compelling than his actual ability on the field. I think Ben, his talk and the nature of the free agency and the big trade with Demetrius Johnson made him bigger than his actual ability to win fights in the UFC, because the guy I saw against Damian Maia just wasn't elite level. So that, I remember Tim Tebow, that name just popped right into my head. Bigger than you would imagine him being with the skill set he had.
How humbling do you think this must be for him to hear, all the people that are going to talk about this? And I would imagine, to be completely transparent, you don't go 1-2 with a disputed one and call it successful, but at the same time, there's no shame in losing to the people that he lost to either. So it is kind of a catch-22. I mean, they did literally give him no favors. He fought 3 extremely talented fighters, but at the same time, as you mentioned, so much of this was propped up on him. So much of the animosity that he continued to build toward Kamaru Usman seemed like it was all building up to a bigger picture, which, whether he was going to retire or not, that fight, I believe, is completely out of the question. Not only would no one want to see it, Ben was slowly losing his relevance in the UFC landscape just because it wasn't just that he was losing, it was how he was losing.
One thing I will say, and right now, there's no distance. He retired today or announced it today. One thing that if you're objective and this game and you've been around this game a long time, those were also really winnable fights. Really winnable. Masvidal is not known as a fantastic wrestler. He's not known as a guy that you could lay on and use your ground and pound and all those. He's not a tricky submission specialist. Damian Maia had never defeated a standout Division I wrestler at 170 pounds. He hadn't. Okay? So it was also like Ben should have won those fights. He should have. He might have blanketed them and it would have been really boring. But stylistically, those matchups were winnable, very winnable. He didn't even get to the guys that I thought would beat him. I thought he'd have trouble with the other standout wrestlers, the Colby Covingtons, Kamaru Usman, Tyron Woodley. And I know Tyron Woodley's his boy. He didn't even get there. Masvidal knocks him out in 5 seconds with a flying knee. Damian Maia chokes him out. Damian Maia, who had always had trouble with guys with this style, he had been out-wrestled and beaten by far inferior wrestlers in Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, Tyron Woodley, as good as they were. Ben's the best wrestler of all those guys. And the one time he beats a standout wrestler, and I know John Fitch is a standout wrestler, but John Fitch was never an All-American at Purdue. He wrestled at Purdue. He was never an All-American. Ben was a 4-time finalist, 2-time champion, Olympian. Damian Maia never beat anyone at that level, at 85 or 70, right? At 85, of course, he beat Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen was an All-American at Oregon, took 8th, I think. He had never beaten a wrestler as close to Ben Askren's talent and ability, ever. And Ben is the one guy he beats? So another thing, too, is when you said he wasn't done any favors, I disagree. I think all of those, I mean, Robbie, of course, a hard hitter. You never know with Robbie Lawler. But I thought Masvidal and Damian Maia were, I won't say softballs because they're both dangerous in their own ways, but stylistically very, very winnable fights for Ben Askren.
Well, I think when you look at it, now, and like you said, it's still very, very fresh. And certainly, time can maybe change how we feel about some of this. To the typical fan, to the average fan, his 18-0 record means absolutely nothing. All we've learned now is that when he came in, we're questioning whether he truly was a top talent. And I mean, a lot of the things that you just said there in favor of who we fought actually work against him when you look at it in that context. So you can't tell me, oh, he came in as a top talent. Oh, he lost to guys he should have won to. And at the same time, look at it and try to justify that he was maybe not as good as we thought he was. I'm thinking that a lot of people are going to look at this as talent outside the UFC isn't as good as talent outside the UFC, and that's all there is to it. And that's what allows a guy who comes in 18-0, whether Dana was for or against him, whether you believe all those storylines, and literally, for the betterment of guys like Jorge Masvidal, who honestly probably helped to get to where he is now, just off the notoriety of what he did and what will probably be one of the UFC highlights forever. Damian Maia to justify a lot of his career by finally overcoming a great, wrestler. And to be honest with you, Robbie Lawler is probably always going to want that one back. But I'll tell you right now, I have a feeling a lot of fans, and comment if you've made it 60 minutes of this and disagree with me, a lot of fans, and I was there, will look at that Robbie Lawler win as a giant asterisk to where he easily could have went 0-3.
Easily. The one thing it does point out about the UFC in terms of their talent level and matchmaking is you can't get to the elite level, especially at 170 pounds, which has always been the domain of the great wrestler. I've said it before. GSP, Matt Hughes, even Pat Miletich, decent wrestler, right? Johnny Hendricks, Tyron Woodley. It's great wrestlers have always dominated that division. Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, no exception here. You just can't be elite at 170 in the UFC without running into someone who fights like Ben Askren. You can go all the way through Bellator and ONE FC and never fight one of those guys. Not that they're not great fighters, because they are. You better know how to bang if you're going to be successful in 170 at Bellator. All right? Great strikers. Not a lot of great wrestlers. Scott Coker doesn't like signing those guys. Bjorn Rebney didn't like signing those guys. ONE FC, they don't really like signing those guys. So the one thing about the UFC, not that it's better or worse or anything like that. UFC, the guys at the elite level at 170 can wrestle. And even if they aren't great wrestlers, they've gotten past them before. They've had to. Can't be a success at 170 without getting past some great wrestlers. So Ben didn't come in with a skill set that everybody else went, wow, I've never seen that before. Yeah, he's better. But I challenge you to step on a wrestling mat with Tyron Woodley and tell me that guy can't wrestle. Or Colby Covington or Kamaru Usman or any of those guys at the top. So Ben didn't come in with a skill set that, wow, unbelievable. Never see. In Bellator and ONE, he did. Douglas Lima had never taken on a wrestler like Ben Askren, not even close. So he was a deer in headlights. Korshkov was a deer in headlights. Everybody in ONE FC was a deer in headlights. And I don't want to, I do think the UFC has the best fighters in the world, but it's also a matter of they also had a talent level in that area that all the guys at 170 were experienced. Ben didn't shock anybody with his abilities.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, it is a very polarizing retirement. There are people that are going to be strong one way against the other. I don't feel like there's anybody that's just down the middle on Ben Askren or undecided how they feel. Usually people take a very firm stance, whether for or against. And I will say, for one time, I will literally sit there and overanalyze the comment section to get the opinion of the people that watch this video. We appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary.